the James City County Planning Commission regular meeting for January 2nd, 2019. Mr. Holt, would you call the roll, please, sir?
Ms. Leverins.
Here.
Ms. Leverins is an at-large member. Mr. Polster.
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. Mr. Haldeman.
Here.
Mr. Haldeman represents the Berkeley District. Mr. Schmidt.
Here.
Mr. Schmidt represents the Roberts District and is this year's vice chair. Mr. O'Connor.
Present.
Mr. O'Connor is an at-large member. Mr. Kropp.
Here.
Mr. Kropp represents the Powhatan District. Mr. Richardson.
Here.
Mr. Richardson represents the Stonehouse District and is this year's chair. I'm Paul Holt, Director of Community Development and Planning for the county, and sitting to my left is Mr. Max Halavin, our Deputy County Attorney. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. This evening, I would like to open the public comment period. The public comment is for topics not subject to a public hearing. Seeing and hearing no one, we will close the public comment period and move on to reports of the Commission, starting with the Development Review Committee. And Mr. Schmidt.
Okay. The Development Review Committee, DRC, met on Wednesday, December 28, with Mr. Haldeman, Mr. Polster, and Mr. Schmidt present. The DRC reviewed one conceptual plan for discussion. That conceptual plan was C-18-0110 for Hazelwood Farms. We heard from two of the landowners, Larry Hazelwood and Debbie Drudge. In addition, we heard from Tim Trant of Kaufman and Knowles, who submitted the conceptual plan. Arch Marston and Jason Grimes of AES Consulting Engineers, along with John Hopke of Hopke & Associates, also made presentations. The land is divided into two large parcels, truncated by Interstate 64, and is located at the western limits of our county in the Stonehouse District. The smaller northern parcel is comprised of 79 acres, and the larger southern parcel is 325 acres. The comprehensive plan has the northern parcel designated as mixed use, and it is currently zoned B1. In the comprehensive plan, the southern parcel is designated as economic opportunity and is presently zoned as B1 and A1. Finally, both parcels fall within the primary service area, but do not yet have public utilities serving them. The Hazelwood land is also situated in close proximity to an I-64 interchange. Traffic studies have already been undertaken, numerous design guidelines have been submitted, and AES Consulting Engineers has conducted research as to the feasibility of a large-scale project on the land in question. The current vision is to turn the northern parcel, called Village Center, into a mixed-use parcel with a commercial emphasis, and for the southern parcel, named the Stonehouse Enterprise Center, to become economic opportunity and exhibit a light industrial emphasis with some residential as well as commercial sections. For the Enterprise Center section to change from A1 and B1 to economic opportunity, it would have to go through the legislative process to rezone, while the Village Center area would need a special use permit to change from B1 to mixed use. Mr. Hazelwood pointed out that the land is within the foreign trade zone, where there could potentially be incentives for businesses to avoid some tariffs on international goods. In summation, the current landowners, as well as the consultants present at the meeting, hope to make Hazelwood Farms properties more desirable for development through zoning changes. The commissioners' questions centered around the RPA, or resource protection areas, on both the northern and southern parcels. The conceptual plans showed roads passing through the RPA at various locations, and there was some concern as to the impact on stream headwaters. In addition, vegetated buffers between the interstate and the properties, the costs associated with getting major utilities to the land, traffic impacts, and a connection to the adjacent Upper County Park were all topics of conversation initiated by commissioners. No legislative action was needed since this was a conceptual plan presented to the DRC. And with that, if any other commissioners have questions about that meeting, I'd be happy to answer them.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
So as next step, it will go through a rezoning application? Is that the plan?
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Moving on to policy, Mr. Haldeman.
Thank you. The Policy Committee met on December 13th. The meeting came to order at 4 p.m. with Mr. Kropp, Ms. Leverins, and Mr. O'Connor, and yours truly in attendance. Mr. Paul Holt reviewed direction from the Board of Supervisors pertaining to proposed zoning ordinance amendments regarding master plan consistency determinations. The proposals were thought to be of sufficient magnitude and impact on property owners to require additional reflection by committee members, so the matter was tabled until the January meeting. At its November 27, 2018 work session, the Board of Supervisors directed the Planning Commission and staff to develop regulations to address protections for the public water supply and areas of public health and water quality sensitivity within the special regulations section of the zoning ordinance. Ms. Tori Haynes reviewed various approaches to crafting these regulations. The committee will review regulations and ordinances from Newport News and York County and discuss this matter at its next meeting. Mr. Tom Leininger reviewed how changes to state code combined with recent Federal Communications Commission's decisions regarding facilities intended to support the deployment of 5G technology require changes to how local zoning ordinance may treat applications for wireless communications facilities. These changes will further reduce local control of zoning. The committee discussed the changes and asked staff to draft changes to county ordinances to bring them in line with the state code. Finally, Ms. Tammy Rosario presented a draft process for revising the 2015 comprehensive plan to the full Planning Commission. According to state code, this must be done every 5 years. Ms. Rosario discussed the timeline with a survey of residents being executed in April 2019. Further outreach by the community participation team will begin in the summer of 2019. The process will continue until completion in the summer of 2021 and adoption by the Board of Supervisors in the fall of 2021. Ms. Rosario mentioned the foundation of the process will be public engagement, key elements of past processes, continuity of vision, and guidance from state code. That concluded the meeting, and if there are any questions, be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halderman. We will now move on to the public hearing section of the meeting. Our first case this evening is case number Z-18-0006, Ironbound Crossing rezoning. Mr. Leininger, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Mr. Mark Rinaldi of the Bush Companies and Mr. Vernon Getty of Getty, Harris, Frank, and Hickman has applied for rezoning for a property located at 4007 Ironbound Road, a portion of the Mount Pleasant Church property at 4002 Ironbound Road, and approximately 0.76 acres of VDOT right-of-way along Old Ironbound Road. The properties are across from Courthouse Commons, Newtown, and Monticello Avenue and Route 199 interchange. This proposal is located where Ironbound Road was constructed prior to Monticello Avenue and Route 199. Previously, this property was rezoned from R8 Rural Residential and M1 Limited Business and Industrial to B1 General Business with proffers to allow a 5-story office building. That proposal was approved by the Board of Supervisors March 12, 2002. This proposal is to rezone approximately 0.74 acres of the Mount Pleasant Church property, the 0.76 acres of VDOT right-of-way, and from R8 Rural Residential to B1 General Business with proffers. Also, it will be amending the B1 property proffers. The applicant is working with VDOT to purchase the 0.76 VDOT right-of-way to be combined with the existing property to create a 1.93 acre parcel shown as Area 1 on the master plan. Area 2 is represented on the master plan for the church. Both Area 1 and 2 are designated as mixed use on the 2035 Comprehensive Plan land use map, and both are inside the primary service area. This proposal does not have a specific use at this time. However, Area 1 is being rezoned for commercial and office use, and Area 2 is being rezoned for an overflow parking lot for the church, as it is a by right use in B1. The proposed master plan allows for 45,000 square feet of building development with a maximum 20,000 square feet of commercial and 25,000 square feet of office. The proposed master plan will allow for 3,000 square feet of institutional use for the church property. Staff finds this proposal to be compatible with surrounding development and consistent with the 2035 Comprehensive Plan and zoning ordinance. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of this application to the Board of Supervisors with the subject proposed proffers. I will be happy to answer any questions you might have. The applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Any questions of staff? Thank you very much. And we will move on and open the public hearing and invite Mr. Getty for comment. Good evening, sir. And as we wait for our technical, are there any disclosures here from the dais?
Mr. Getty called me. He asked if I had any questions. I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Spoke to Mr. Getty briefly Monday.
Same here as well.
Okay.
I had a couple of miscommunications with the applicant, but we never connected.
Thanks very much. Mr. Getty.
Great. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I am Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road, and it's my pleasure to be here on behalf of the applicants in this case. Number of folks here tonight, number of representatives of Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, Mr. Willie Saunders, one of the two trustees, and other folks, Mark Rinaldi with Bush Construction, and other members of the development team, John Hopke with Hopke and Associates, Dexter Williams, our traffic consultant, and Jason Grimes with AES Consulting Engineers. As Tom mentioned, 17 years ago, this property was zoned. It was one of the first approvals along this corridor of development for a 5-story office building, one of which would have been an underground parking deck. Unfortunately, that project proved not to be financially feasible, and the property has sat vacant all 17 years. Mark Rinaldi dug up a rendering of the office building from all those years ago, and unfortunately, it's not here. The G Square property on which that building would have sat is this part of the property. You see the JCSA water tanks here, the VDOT right-of-way, and the church property. And you can see in this photo the need for the church. There happened to be a service underway when this aerial photo was taken, and you can see the need for overflow parking. Back in 2002, when this proposal was working its way through, JCSA and G Square have entered into a cross easement agreement which addresses the joint development of the two parcels and addresses easements for parking and access and stormwater and some cost sharing arrangements. So that is in place and has been for many years. 2 years ago, Mark Rinaldi with Bush Construction, who has a long-term land lease on the G Square parcel and will also control the VDOT parcel when purchased by G Squared, has been working with VDOT to acquire that cul-de-sac. And we have a written agreement with VDOT. There'll be a small branch turnaround built in place of that cul-de-sac, and VDOT and the state will abandon the cul-de-sac and sell it to G Square. Part of that, the church had the option to purchase part of that, but given the relationship and the proposal, they've waived their right to buy any of the cul-de-sacs, so G Square will purchase the entire property. The goal of this application is to permit low-intensity commercial office development on the combined G Square VDOT parcel, entirely consistent with surrounding development in the Monticello corridor. And as has been mentioned, to provide overflow parking and probably other small, gazebos, small accessory uses for the church. As Tom mentioned, there is no particular user in mind. The goal here is just to make the parcel marketable, which it really isn't with the existing proffers for the office building. See the plan. Here's the combined parcel right here. Here's the church parcel, and you can see the buffers and related items. And here's from the design guidelines John Hopke provided, opportunities for streetscape and on-street parking and the like. There have been proffers submitted in each of the properties that limit the uses of the property. They do provide for a binding master plan and set of design guidelines that have already been submitted to and approved by the Newtown Design Review Board and provide that final development plans will also go back to the DRB and staff for review and approval. It limits access to Monticello Avenue, provides for water conservation plan, and provides for warranted traffic improvements if the user that comes in warrants improvements. We obviously agree with your staff report. We think this is consistent with the comprehensive plan surrounding development, and it really will only permit low-intensity uses. If a more intense commercial use comes along, it will have to go back through the commercial SUP process, and new studies and the like would be done, and that can be analyzed at the time. We think the proffers and design guidelines will ensure an attractive and quality development, and this is a prominent location. It's really the last property along this part of the Monticello corridor to develop, and it's right at the intersection of 199 and Monticello. And we think this creates a win-win situation really for the property owners and lessee, and for the church and for the county by ensuring quality development here. So we would urge you to recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors. We'd be glad to answer any questions. I have, putting on a slightly different hat, Mr. Saunders has asked me to read just a brief statement on behalf of the church, and I will do so here. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Willie Saunders, one of the 2 trustees for the Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. Ms. Linton, who's the other trustee, is not able to be here tonight. The church and Bush Construction Corporation have enjoyed a good relationship extending back many years. When Mr. Rinaldi approached the church over 2 years ago to discuss the proposed abandonment of the cul-de-sac and what it could mean for our overflow parking issues, we were eager to work with him to improve parking for funerals, weddings, and other occasional special events. We were surprised to learn that a rezoning of a portion of our land was necessary to make that overflow parking possible, but after considering all our options, we agreed to move ahead. We thank Mr. Getty and Bush Construction for their assistance in the process. The trustees of Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, our pastor, assistant pastor, and members support the requested rezoning changes together with the design guidelines and master plan, and ask that you recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors. In addition, Mr. Rinaldi has spoken today and has met earlier several times with the owner of the mini storage property, who also asked us on his behalf to pass along his support of the project. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Getty. Questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone else prefer to speak this evening? We'll close the public comment and move on to my colleagues for discussion or a motion.
I just had one item that I wanted to close out. There was a last-minute question that I had in terms of the ownership of the MC 302 and the follow-on with that in terms of the agreement between JCSA and the owner of the 302. And what Tom tells me is the county attorney has a copy of it, but it's in storage, and it would be a number of days before they could get it out. But just like my concern on the JCSA agreement on the stormwater facility, I'd like to see that document, at least part of the record of this piece, if it can, even though it's not available tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I motion approval of Z-18-0006 Ironbound Crossing rezoning and the associated proffers.
Thank you, Mr. Kopp. Motion is on the floor. Mr. Holt, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Leverins.
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Kropp.
Aye.
Mr. Schmidt.
Aye.
And Mr. Richardson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. And we move on to your report, Mr. Planning Director. Actually, we move on to Planning Commission considerations.
That's all right. Mr. Chairman, we don't have any agenda items for commission consideration this evening.
Okay. Now, sir, to your report.
Mr. Chairman, other than what's been provided in your agenda packets, I don't have anything additional to add this evening, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
None for me. Colleagues, no? All right, we will, thank you very much, by the way, and Happy New Year to all of you. We will move on to Planning Commission discussion and requests.
We have at least one item, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring forward a resolution of appreciation for yours truly. And I'm going to go one.
Oh, sure.
If you want to.
Of course.
I got to, it's hidden away in a little compartment.
Do we have a photographer out there? Yes, we do.
Tim's got a smartphone. Resolution of appreciation, Heath Richardson. Whereas Mr. Heath Richardson has served the citizens of James City County as a member of its Planning Commission from February 2014 to December 2018. And whereas Mr. Richardson has served on the Policy Committee and the Development Review Committee, and whereas Mr. Richardson served as the chairman of the 2016 Development Review Committee, and whereas Mr. Richardson served as the chairman of the 2018 Planning Commission, and whereas during Mr. Richardson's service, the Planning Commission reviewed substantive updates to the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance and considered numerous legislative development cases, and whereas Mr. Richardson actively participated in the update to the comprehensive plan toward 2035 Leading the Way, and whereas Mr. Richardson served on the 2015 Planning Commission Working Group, and whereas Mr. Richardson is a graduate of the Virginia Tech Certified Planning Commissioner Program, now therefore it be resolved that the Planning Commission of James City County, Virginia, does hereby extend its sincere appreciation to Mr. Heath Richardson. Be it further resolved that the Planning Commission wishes to express its gratitude to Mr. Heath Richardson for his time of dedicated service to the citizens of James City County. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Thank you. Well, I appreciate the gesture from all of you, and I have thoroughly enjoyed serving with each and every one of you. The staff here is great. It has been a learning experience that I'll never forget, and it'll make me a better citizen. So next time I see you guys, I'll be over there somewhere. Thanks so much. Where were we?
Okay, you were right there.
Are there any other discussion items or requests?
Just thanks for leading the way this past year, and
Thank
best of
you.
luck.
It's been great. You guys are great. Really enjoyed it. Okay, well, we will hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.